Hey guys, today I am going to answer some of your questions. I used to do this where every single week I would come on and answer any of your questions. And so I am going to do that today. I have a list of questions that I get all the time, or I just have looked into it and decided that I think some of these are some good questions to ask. So I want to get started with you and I want to answer some of your burning real estate questions. There is a lot going on in 2025. So I want to make sure that you are in the know. And so let's jump in and answer some of your questions, some of your burning questions. And if you have any questions as we're going, pop them in the chat and I will answer them as we go. So specifically, I want to answer questions about what's happening in 2025. So let me find a couple of questions that I think are good. First off, one of the things that I get asked all the time and we talk about a lot is actually about interest rates. What is happening with interest rates? What are we going to see coming up? How do interest rates impact buying and selling real estate? Well, there are a couple answers to that question, and I feel like this is a good time because interest rates are obviously a really important part of the buying and selling process. Because if interest rates are relatively high, like they are right now, you're going to have a lot of buyers who are going to stay on the sidelines. However, right now, we also have a really low inventory. And so, because of that low inventory, we have people there's still a higher buyer demand. We still have people who say, I still need to buy a house. And so, even though we have people who are saying, well, I don't want to worry about that 7% interest rate, we have even more people who are saying, hey, I'm not going anywhere. I'm holding on to my 2 or 3% interest rate. So I'm holding on to my house. I'm not selling. So we have tons of people who are not selling. We have more people, not a ton, but more people who are saying that they want to buy. And so right now, as interest rates sit on February 12th of 2025, interest rates are about, for a 30-year fix, they're about, I think I saw today, 7.03. I'm not a lender, so don't come at me, but I think they're about 7.03, which is, you know what, it's fairly high. It's pretty high. And what I always tell people is you just want to get into a house that you can afford. If you can afford the monthly rate, now is a great time to buy. Because what happens with supply and demand? When we have low inventory like we do and high demand, which remember, if interest rates come down, that buyer demand is going to go through the roof. So we still are going to have low inventory, high demand, housing prices are going to go up. Now, right now, and for the past year or so, prices have remained steady. Even though people are saying interest rates are high, housing prices are going to go down, that would normally be the case, except that we have such low inventory. So because we have that low inventory, we are really making it so that housing prices are staying pretty high. So when we have housing prices being high and interest rates, I couldn't think of the word, interest rates being also relatively high, we have this interesting market that has been created today where we definitely do have housing prices staying where they're at, which is high. And I'm in Southern California, so my housing prices are high. We have other places in Southern and Central California where housing prices are still relatively affordable, but not where I am. Where I am, a single family house, a starter home, is realistically not a starter home for most people. Some people have to move up 1 or 2 times to get into a quote starter home. And that is, the average price point is going to be $800,000 for that. That's not a starter home. And so when we have these first-time home buyers coming to the market saying, hey, I'm going to get a first-time home buyer deal, you absolutely can get first-time home buyer prices and all of that kind of stuff. But the reality is that it doesn't help that much if you can't afford the monthly payments. I was just looking at a house that's for sale, and I was on, I don't know, Zillow or one of those, and they were saying that if you put 20% down on a condo that was, I think it was less than 600,000, it was still going to be a monthly mortgage of $4,200 or $4,300 a month. Now, people across the country are saying, "Are you crazy? That is so much money." And it's true, it is. But that's why we say, as long as you can comfortably afford the payment, the interest rate doesn't matter. Because number one, you can lock in right now. So if interest rates go higher, and let's be real, we don't know what's coming. With this administration, it's all over the place. We have no clue what's coming. I can pretty much guarantee you it's not going to be the best for the average American, but the reality is we don't know what's coming. And so, because we have no idea, you could lock in right now at a 7%, because if it goes up to 8 or 9%, you're going to say, "Woo, I'm glad I got that 7%. But if you actually lock in now and it goes lower, well, now you can get in at a relatively good deal, because we can foresee that housing prices are just going to go up. So you can get in with relatively low competition, a relatively good deal, and you're really making it so that if you can still afford the payment, even when interest rates go down, then you can refinance. So you're either locking in right now at an interest rate that feels a little bit high, or you're locking in right now and avoiding it going higher, or you're locking in right now and making it so that when interest rates go down, you can refinance. So there are lots of things coming and changing, and we don't know what's coming. But the reality is that with the interest rate conversation, whether it goes up or down, now is a relatively good time to buy, because you can avoid all of that competition. Remember in 2020, 2021, even 2022, people were offering $200,000-$300,000 over asking, removing all loan contingencies, all appraisal contingencies. They're doing all of this that is just like craziness to be able to get into a house, because it was a buyer frenzy. We're not in that situation right now. Now you go in and you submit an offer, and it can be one of the only offer or maybe one other. That's such a better position to be in than being one of 65 other offers that have all offered well over asking. So, that's just something that you have to consider. So that's a question that I get all the time. And it's a question that we always have to be aware of. We have to understand, what is the interest rate impact on all of our home sales and home prices. And it is a big impact. We have to understand that. So another question I get, hi Adina, thanks for joining. Another question that I get, if you have any questions, drop them in the chat. This is my first time going live, so I'm not 100% sure how to see the chat, but I'll try and get it. I'll try and see it. So another question that I have been asking and pondering myself is, what's going to happen with the fires? There have been so many houses and so many neighborhoods completely demolished, but they're prime neighborhoods. They're in prime locations. And so what is going to be the outpouring of, what's going to be the effect of that? Well, we've already seen that there's been some kind of regulations put in place where they can't, I just read something where they said they can't offer less than something like 70% of the current of what the current value was January 5th or January 6th, the day of or before the fires. They have to still, if you're going to be buying property, you can't, and I'm getting this wrong, but it was something about, if it's an unsolicited offer, you cannot accept less than 70% or something like that. I don't know. If anybody knows, let me know, of the offer that it was before the fires. So that really puts a strain on people who are wanting to come and buy this up, which is a good thing. But it also makes it that it puts a strain on those homeowners, because a lot of these homeowners were underinsured. And so they cannot rebuild to the point that it was. So I was reading something about another homeowner who their house just a couple months ago was worth 2.7 million, and they are not able to sell. Well, actually, they put it on the market just as the raw land and demolished as it was for 999,000, and the real estate agent said that it was going for significantly more than that, which who knows what that means, what it'll end up closing for. But it's not anywhere near 2.7 million, which is what it was. Well, maybe it is near that. I don't know. We'll find out once it closes. But it's not, they're not necessarily getting back what it was worth back then. So back then in January 5th. So we need to kind of consider that there's a lot that's going to be happening. Now, do I think it'll rebuild? Absolutely. It is prime real estate. All of in the Pacific Palisades, even into the valley, all of these areas that were impacted, even for the Eaton fire in Altadena, Pasadena, all those areas, the houses that were burned, they're prime real estate. And so will they be rebuilt? Yes, I do think so. But I think you're going to have a bunch of investors coming in and offering pennies for these properties that just a month ago, were worth millions. And so it's going to be really interesting to see how that impacts the Southern California market in general, because I do think that is something that is going to impact home prices around there, and it's going to impact home prices in the whole county, all of LA County. Now, I'm outside of LA County, but I'm the next neighboring county, and we've recently had fires that have done the same kind of damage. And so we have certain regulations that are being put in place, certain protocols. One of those emergency regulations saying you can't price gouge. You can't charge more than 10% of what the rental would have been in LA and Ventura County. And so I'm in Ventura County, so it's the same throughout. Now, those are going to expire and they might extend that, but as of today, I haven't heard that they've extended it. So anyway, there are some different things that we're going to hear about with these fires. I'm going to keep my eye on it. I'm going to keep hearing about it and finding out, because I really don't know what is going to happen here. You're trying to find an insurer that covers Central Coast. I do have an insurance agent. I'll send it to you after this, or email me actually. Email me to ask for my insurance agent. I'm actually not 100% sure what his territory is, but I think that insurance agents cover all of California. You know, they're like realtors and lenders. They are licensed in California. So I do have a guy who has helped me in the past with all kinds of hard to insure places. A lot of places that have already said, you know, all of the big names have pulled out. And so he has been able to help me with that. That being said, I've not heard from him, or I guess I have not tried to get a property insured that is in a high fire zone since these fires. I got a property insured that was in a high fire zone before the fires and had never been impacted by fires before. And there were a bunch of insurance companies who were saying, nope, we're out, we're not going to insure. And he was able to find one that was pretty affordable. So the question is, how affordable is it going to be? That's the real question, which they are I'm hearing talk of things being thrown out about the regulations, and they're going to require these insurance companies to offer it at a reasonable price. But what does that mean? I don't know. So stay tuned for that. More to come for sure. And so anyway, Adina, email me and I will get that info to you. All right. Any questions that you've heard, pop them in the chat. And I am going to keep going with a couple of other questions that I have heard and that we talk about all the time in our Tuesday meetings. So Tuesday at 9:30, join us, because we talk about a lot of these. We tackle a lot of these issues. But this is kind of my Ask a Coach time, where you can come in and ask me any questions that you might have. Are there any negotiation strategies that work well in today's market? So this is a good one, because I love talking about negotiating, because in my mind, negotiation is just conversations. It's just about having conversations. It's understanding the other side's motivation, whoever that other side might be, whether that other side is an agent, or whether the other side is your client, or whether the other side is an insurance person, whatever it is. life is all about a negotiation. You know, we start negotiating when we're 2 years old with our parents. We continue negotiating with, in my case, my nieces and nephews. They negotiate with me all the time. So negotiation is a big topic, and we have to learn how to negotiate in life, but especially in real estate and in this landscape. Because now, it used to be that we would go in and have a buyer's consultation or a seller's consultation, a listing consultation, and we would say, okay, seller, here's what I'm going to provide for you. This is what I'm going to do. And for all of that, I'm going to charge you X%, and I'm going to basically split that with the buyer's agent. So this is just your fee that you're paying, and all of it, I'm going to divvy it out. I'm going to divvy it out. You don't have to worry about it. Well, times have changed, and that is not the case anymore. And so what we need to do now is we need, we need to be extremely transparent. And with that transparency, we have to let our sellers know where this money is going, where it's all coming from, how do we do all this. And so one of the things that I really like to do is I like to bring a net sheet to all my listing presentations. And so depending on where I think they'll be, like if I have never seen their house before, or maybe I have, they told me that they've done some work and I've never seen it. So maybe I'm going to bring a couple of different net sheets, because the reality is I want to train my seller to focus on the bottom line. My key phrase is nothing but net. We are only focusing on nothing but net. Don't look at anything else. Nothing but net. That's what we're looking at. Now, of course, you're going to have some people who want to itemize it and want to read through every little line, which is great. That's why I bring a net sheet. That's exactly why I have a net sheet that people can see and people can read through, because I don't want to come and say, I think you're probably going to get about this. Now, of course, if I've never seen the house, I don't know what condition it's in. So that's why I say I like to bring a couple of different net sheets to say, okay, if it's in A condition, it's going to be this. If it's in B condition, it's going to be this. If it's in C condition, it's going to be this. But in addition to that, I have told you before that I have a menu of services. And on that menu of services, they're able to choose between 3 different levels of service. The lowest level, they're still getting full service. They're still getting everything that they can get. Well, they're getting everything that they would get from a regular real estate agent. The second level of service, they're going to get a little bit extra. They're going to get more things, and their house is probably going to sell for a higher price. And then the third level is a white glove service where I take care of everything, and I even give them a credit back at the end. So there are lots of variables. And so because of that, I come prepared with a bunch of different net sheets. So usually I have about, roughly at least 3 different net sheets, because usually what I do is if I'm saying I don't exactly know the price, I'm going to go roughly in the middle of what I think it's going to be. And then I say, okay, give me a net sheet with my fee being X, X plus, and X plus plus, so that they can look at it and they can see. Now, on that net sheet, I also include what the buyers are going to be paying, or what the sellers are going to be paying for the buyer's agent. Because what I want them to understand at the time of us sitting down and having our listing consultation is I want them to understand that working with a buyer's agent is going to be the best way to get lots of eyeballs on the property and get the best possible deal. So we want to incentivize and we want to get as many eyeballs on our property as I can. And the best way to do that is to be able to say, yes, we're offering this fee, the buyer's agent fee. Now, remember, that's something that has changed, but it's still the same conversation as we used to have. So when we're talking about negotiating, it's really just the conversation. We're really just being totally open and transparent. We're saying, okay, here's what the prices that you're going to pay are. Here's the cost of selling your home. It costs money to sell your home. So we're just laying it out for them. We're telling them in advance, here's how much it is. Now, some people don't necessarily care about that. And in your conversations, you're going to be judging that. You're going to be saying, okay, this personality type wants to know all the details. This one says, just give me the bottom line. I don't care about this. Another personality type is going to say, I want to see pictures and I want you to describe it to me and I want to feel the emotion of it. And so it's your job to determine who you're talking to. And then once you've determined that, now you're going to tailor your conversation based on who you're talking to. But keep in mind, usually if you're working with two different people, a couple, a lot of times you're going to have two different personality types and you need to be able to tailor your conversation for both. But this is why I bring a net sheet, because a net sheet is going to work for those people who want to see the details. It's going to work for the people who say, just give me the bottom line. And it's going to work for the people who are saying, let me feel the emotion of it. Because it's not about the net sheet, it's about the conversation that we're having. And so we're able to have a conversation that is going to be much more beneficial because I'm tailoring the conversation to the people who are either, like one personality style or another. But the actual documents that I bring are going to be the same documents, and it's just my conversation that is switching. So when we talk about negotiation, I always say nothing but net, focus on nothing but net. And we want to make sure that we're spelling it out. Now, as far as talking about negotiations, like with requests for repairs and things like that, it's the same kind of thing. We want to be transparent. We want to spell it out. We want to lay it out. But the reality is that a lot of times what we need to help our clients, our seller clients understand is that this is just a credit to them. It doesn't really matter what you're doing. We're focusing on nothing but net. So depending on how much they're going to be giving, it doesn't matter if it goes to the buyer agent fees. It doesn't matter if it goes to the request for repair. It doesn't matter where it goes. It's going to be going. And so we want to make sure that our clients understand that from the very beginning. Here's how much it'll cost. Here's an estimate of typically what you're going to see in repair costs. Now, if it's like a brand new home, you usually won't see a lot of that. But I just sold a house that was built in 2020, and the buyer's agent still came back and asked for a couple of repairs to be done because codes have changed. And so certain things aren't up to code. But because it was a newer house, it was very minimal. So it wasn't a lot of things that they had to get done. And some things were still under warranty that they could still get fixed. So you really want to keep that in mind, because if it's something, I also sold a house that was built in the 60s. So now that's like what, 60 years old, right? And so this house is going to have a lot more issues, especially because the sellers didn't keep up with it and didn't remodel it. They didn't do a lot to this house. They were just living in it and they were comfortable with it. And so we want to make sure that we are giving them this information and telling them, hey, this is the reality of your situation. Here's your house, whether it's new, whether it's old, here's what you can expect to pay in one way or another. You can pay it via a credit, you can pay it via repairs, or you can also, it's a negotiation. So you can say no, but you're risking your buyer leaving. Now, what I always tell people is if I'm on the listing side, remember, when you're on the listing side, you're representing your seller. When you're on the buyer side, you are representing your seller. So no, you're representing your buyer if you're on the buyer side. And so you need to make sure that you are understanding that and not giving away too much information to the other side, because you are trying to negotiate on behalf of your client. So when we think about negotiating with if you're the seller, what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically try and get the buyer to pay for as much as we can without scaring them away, without saying, nope, I'm done, we're going to cancel. But if I'm on the buyer side, I'm going to do the same thing, but for my buyer. I'm going to say, no, we're always going to ask for the buyer to take care of repairs. We're always going to ask for the buyer to do, whatever it is. Now, keep in mind, it's always your client's, they're the one in the driver's seat. So it's, you give your advice, you can advise them on what to do. And they're the ones who say, okay, yes, I agree to this, or no, let's do this, or maybe we should try this, or whatever. You're there to advise them. And that is your job. You're not there to make decisions for them. So if you're telling them, hey, I'm advising you as a buyer to ask for $20,000 in repair and they say, ooh, I think that's too much. What if we ask for $10,000? Great. We're going to ask for $10,000. It is not on, now you can come back to them and you can say, well, here's the thing. If we ask for $10,000, they might come back and, ask to split it down the middle and ask for 5,000. So maybe we should go to the higher amount and just know that they're going to come back. It's okay for you to have the conversation with them, but in the end, they are your client. They're the one in charge. They are the buyer. They are the seller. So you have to go with what they have to say. So the other thing to just keep in mind is with negotiations, you want to know when to walk away. And you want to make sure that you understand your client's motivation enough to be able to know how to advise them, whether to walk away, whether to keep it going, whether to stay in at all costs, whatever it is. You need to understand your client's motivation. And so if you, there's Blueberry. So if you are, now I've lost my train of thought. You need to know when to walk away. So if you are going and talking to the seller on behalf of your buyer and your buyer is like, I don't want to lose this house, then you need to say, okay, well, then we need to be prepared to offer this. But if your buyer is going in and saying, I don't really care. I don't really like this house that much. I'm kind of over it. I'm done. Well, now you know how to communicate with the other side. If you're trying to keep this deal together, which let's be honest, our job as realtors are to keep the deal together and get to the close. Our job is not to just submit offers and walk through half of the process. Our job is to get it to the close. But the reality is our job is to also service our clients very well and at a very high level. And if we're not doing that by really walking away when we need to walk away or pushing through with our clients when we need to push through, then we're not doing the service that we should be doing with them. So we want to make sure that, so let me give you an example. I have a listing right now. It's overpriced. Let me just tell you, I know it's overpriced. The seller is not budging on it. Okay, fine. Remember, like I said, as much as I push back and as much as I tell them, hey, this is what it's probably going to sell at, they are the ones who ultimately determine. Okay, so we're a little overpriced. We got an offer and it was a pretty good offer in my opinion. And this agent, you could tell they are not an agent who does business regularly. They said that they are like a painter or a plumber or something, and they just have their license and they just have it so that they can do their own transactions. Literally every single document I got from them, every single one was wrong. And I had to then go and write counter offers or amendments or addendums or whatever to just make sure that everything was right and lining up. So I'm having to do double the work, but whatever, we have this offer. It had been sitting. So this is great that we have an offer. Well, from the beginning, because of some of the things he was saying and some of the things he knew, I knew this was not going to close. I knew that this was not going to go through. This guy was not going to be a real buyer. But I was like, you know what? Let's just go through the process and see where it goes, because maybe I'll be surprised. And we were in escrow for maybe a month. We were in escrow for a little while. It was going to be 90 days because they were going to sell their old house and all of that kind of stuff. But there were just a lot of yellow flags for me, not necessarily red flags, but like yellow flags that made me feel like, I don't think this is going to close. For instance, they were coming and trying to buy a house for $900,000, let's just say, to keep it easy. But they are currently living in a house and going to sell a much nicer house, much newer house. And they bought it last year for 1.1 million. And they were going to sell, or no, they bought it last year for 1 million and they were putting it on the market for 1.1 million. But if you know anything about short-term capital gains, if you sell before 2 years, you have to pay short-term capital gains, which are, I think they are 37%. So if he's going to net $100,000, he's going to have to pay a lot of money for selling this house to go into a lesser house. Like objectively, everybody would look at this and say, this is worse. So to me, I was kind of trying to get to, what is the point here? Why are you trying to do this? And that's part of that negotiation, is you're trying to get to the motivation of even the seller, the buyer or the agent side. He was representing himself. So he ended up telling us that his wife really wanted to move back to Ojai. And so I said, okay, well, if it's an emotional decision, I can understand that. Anyway, he just came back with all of the craziest stuff. And the seller did much more than I even thought that the seller would do. They paid for all kinds of repairs. They did a bunch of stuff that I didn't think they would do. And to me, I was always just saying, whatever we do, it's just going to be better for the next buyer, because I am 900% sure this guy is going to cancel. Lo and behold, he canceled last week. And even the cancellation form that he filled out was wrong. I was like, oh my gosh, thank the Lord that we're done with this guy. So anyway, no, trust your gut, know when to pull out, know when to walk away. Anyway. Yeah. So know when to walk away, because you don't need to get emotionally tied up and wrapped up in this stuff, because number one, if you have a listing, you're probably going to get another buyer. If you have a buyer, hopefully, if they've already written the offer, they're going to get back in under contract, and your job is to get them back under contract while they're still hot. So don't worry, don't stress. If it's not a good deal, if it's not working, if you've done all you can to try and get it to the bottom line, or try and get it to the end possible time, then that's it. Like, know when to walk away, and that's fine. Question: when is the right time to walk away from a possible buyer? This is a great question. And I appreciate this question, Adina, because I feel like especially new agents never want to walk away. They're always like, no, I can do this. I don't have a ton of business, so I need to take all the business that I can. While most of the time I do agree that it's going to be good experience for you and all of that kind of stuff, it's also potentially going to be a lot of wasted time. So I have an example for you, another story for you. I was working with this buyer that I met online. Randomly, we called me up something. I don't remember exactly where the lead came from, but I had never met her before. And I talked to her on the phone, vetted her out. It was legit. She was pre-approved with a bank that I had never heard of. And so it was kind of like, it was already a bit like, okay, that's kind of weird. But she told me that she owned her house outright and she wanted to sell her house, but she didn't want to sell her house until after she bought something else. So I'm thinking, okay, well, if she owns her home outright and she's already pre-approved, that's not really a red flag to me. I'm thinking, okay, like that makes sense to me. You can be pre-approved. She doesn't have the huge bills of a mortgage and all of that to be pre-approved for a second mortgage at the same time. So, okay, it seems legit. I had been trying to call her lender and I could not get a hold of them. Turns out the lender was on vacation or something, and they didn't reassign the case or something. I don't know. I can't remember exactly, but I couldn't get a hold of them. So she really wanted to see this one house or a couple houses. And so I took her out one day and I did everything right. I will say I did everything that I would tell you to do. I had her meet me in my office. We did a buyer presentation. I had her sign the BRBC before we needed before it was a requirement, because I've always told you this is what I do anyway for my clients, because I think that it is important to do that. Anyway, I had her sign it. I even told her that we were going in separate cars because I did not know her. And I don't like to I think it's extremely important for realtors to be safe. And so I did not even want her to drive with me because I did not know who this person was. So we go and see these houses. They were great. She liked one of the houses. So, okay, great. We talk about the process of submitting an offer and all of this kind of stuff. We talked about the offer she wanted to submit, yada, yada, yada. Okay, great. On the way out, she did not have GPS. She had a cell phone, but she never used it. She didn't have GPS, but she knew basically how to get home. So she said, just get me to the freeway and I can get there. So I said, okay, We're going to go out this little neighborhood, turn on this street, and it'll take you to the freeway. And I said, just follow me out because I'm doing the same thing. So she follows me out of the little neighborhood. We start going on the street, and then she zooms around me and turns right on a street. And I was like, well, that's a way to go. I mean, she's not, maybe she knows where she's going and knows what she's doing. Okay. And I continued on my way, just like I said. She calls me like 6 hours later. You told me the wrong way to go. And I was like, no, I didn't. You turned. And I was shocked. And I was surprised, thinking you know where it was. She's like, I had to go all the way down PCH and blah, blah, blah. And I said, oh, no, well, hopefully it was a beautiful drive. Oh, it was. Okay, great. So now in her good graces again. But yes, a little, some flags are starting to show. So we get under contract with this one house, and it's beautiful, and it's a newer build, somewhere in the 2000s. I can't remember exactly how old, but it was new-ish, and it was a townhouse. So we're under contract. I'm still trying to get a hold of this lender, but I had gotten a hold of them enough to be able to say, we're ready to go. Yes, we're moving forward, blah, 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 all of that stuff. Okay, great. So we're moving forward, and she will not talk to me on the phone at all. She only emails me, and she doesn't even do that very well. She emails me like a whole paragraph in the subject line, and then we'll put in the body of it, get back to me, or something like that. So it was very difficult communicating with her. But I was doing it because my thought is I want to communicate with them the best way that they can, the way that they prefer. And I can email. I could figure out what she was saying. But I kept telling her, let's get on the phone. Let's get on the phone. And she kept saying, no, 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 no. Anyway, finally get a hold of the lender. And the lender tells me, well, she has to sell her home. It's contingent on the sale of her home. What did they say? It's approved, but it's contingent on the sale of her home. And I was like, you've got to be freaking kidding me. She did not tell me this. She told me she owns her home outright and that she was fully pre-approved. So I talked to her and I said, your lender that you brought to me is saying that you need to sell your home. No problem. Let's get your home on the market. I can get your home on the market in a week. Let's just do it. And she's like, oh my gosh, no, 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 no. Why are you telling me this? Is the first time I'm hearing about it. So I get the lender in and I say, can you clarify more? And the lender says, we talked about this on the phone. I sent you an email. You knew why is this the first time I'm hearing about it? She's blaming me for it, going crazy. Anyway, long story longer, we end up canceling this deal. And because she kept telling me, I don't want to be homeless. I can't be homeless, trying to get her a bridge deal. I don't want to do that. Why are you talking to my lender? And I was like, listen, your lender and I, we work as a team. I have to talk to your lender. She was mad about that, all of this stuff. Moral of the story, there were flags all the way through. We ended up canceling, and I was like, I don't think I can work with you, basically. So I finally walked away from the buyer. But I learned a lot. Even though I had been in the business for a little while, I learned a lot in that one transaction, or lack of a transaction, because I was able to learn the red flags about, like, what am I seeing here? And learn what is my time, energy, emotional capacity worth? Is it worth sitting here and getting this experience, or is it not? And at that point, I would say that was worth it for me. So I'm glad I stuck it out, and I'm glad I ended up cutting her off. Now, what I will say is that it's really important to just know when they are like yanking your chain, when they are just trying to get you to do nonsense for the sake of doing nonsense. And the best way to be able to get those people gone is to really follow a structured system. And if you tell them, this is how we do it, this is what we do, I need you to sign this agreement. And if they refuse, or if they won't follow those systems that you put in place, that's a really good indication that they're not a real buyer and they're not going to be easy or good for you. Now, what I will say is what you should do, and what I would recommend, is refer them to somebody else. See who in your office is willing to take a challenging buyer, because there are going to be people who are. There are going to be people who are willing to do that. So see who in your office is willing to do that and get a referral fee if it ever closes. Because I might not be willing to take that on, but some other agent might. And then at least I get something for it. But I don't have the headache. I don't have all the craziness of having to deal with this like terrible nightmare of a buyer. So I think it's always good to determine, what are you willing to deal with? What are you willing to walk away with? And is the experience, because it's good experience. Anytime you have experiences like that, it is good experience for you. So it's beneficial for you to walk away sometimes, but also if you decide to stay, I would say good for you, do it. I have some people who are, I had an agent that I just did a collab and close mentoring thing with, where she had a seller who had listed the property before and the other agent couldn't sell it. And so the people in my office were telling her, don't take this on, you're not going to be able to do it. And I said, take it on, get the experience. This is going to be good. And she ended up bringing me on as a mentor, and we were able to walk through it. We ended up double ending that deal and it closed. It was kind of a challenge. It was kind of a nightmare, but we knew exactly what we were getting into, and it was the best experience for her. It was her first transaction. She actually ended up double ending it. So for her to have listened to the other naysayers to say, don't take it on because it's too hard, I say at the beginning of your business, do it. Adina said, I feel like a couple of buyers yanking my chain right now. They say they want to work with me, but they're waiting for the right time. They haven't signed the BRBC and they haven't sent me pre-qualification. So with that, I mean, I would just say, great, I'm here when you're ready, and maybe keep checking in with them, but I wouldn't do too much. I wouldn't be like actively, I would put them on an MLS drip campaign and send it to them. Put them on a quarterly call plan and call them once a quarter and say, hey, how's it going? What are we thinking? What are we doing? And if they totally like push you off, or if they're shoving you off, they might not be ready, number one. And it might just be that they're saying, for real, now is not the right time. Or it just might be that they're not real buyers. But if you don't spend tons of time and energy on them, it doesn't matter that much. So I would say keep them on if I were you. And I wouldn't force them to do the BRBC. Obviously, you can't force them to sign anything. I wouldn't require them to come in for a buyer's presentation or consultation. Although I would, when they tell me that they're ready, I would say, great. The first step is coming in for a buyer's consultation so that you can really be on the same page. Adina, you reminded them so many times, and it's always something happened, like a death in the family. I mean, I hear you. And I think at the same time, buying a house is big. They have, I mean, that is definitely something that you have to consider, is that buying a house is a big decision. And so for somebody to say like, oh, I'm not quite ready, that's okay. Let them not be ready for a minute. You don't want to work with them until they are ready. But you're saying they have a million questions about different properties. Now, remember that the BRBC, the new rules are that if you do any kind of agency, if you have any kind of agency relationship with them, you have to have a BRBC signed. And so depending on the type of questions they're asking, you may not be able to answer that without a BRBC signed. So if they're asking questions that they can find online, it's okay to answer them, but also I wouldn't put too much time into them. I would show them where to find it. And then other than that, I would just leave it as is. I would not be trying to I wouldn't be trying to like waste your time on somebody who's really not going to close. They're just really kicking tires. So depending on the questions they have, you might not be able to answer them. Okay, on YouTube, Rafina said, I've lost time with clients that were not ready to buy, for sure. And that's where the time versus money comes into play. You don't want to be wasting your time. It is much better time spent for you getting new clients than you working with your old clients clients who are asking you questions and doing these things, but never going to buy. You're wasting your time. And sometimes we are we are going to benefit from that because it's going to give us experience. And Adina, you're saying they're asking about building permits. I would direct them and say, go to the city and talk to them about it. They would be the ones to ask them for it. So that's what I would say. I would teach them how to find these things on their own, because that is absolutely something that, first off, you never go and do the building permit kind of situation, because that puts liability on you. So you have to be really careful about that. If you're looking at permits and looking into it online and stuff like that, you can do that, but just know that the more information you're getting, that is an agency relationship. So you don't want to be doing all that. If they have questions about building permits, they can go to the city and look it up themselves. It's really easy to do. It's not that hard. And like, they could even go into the county and pull, request all of these, but a lot of times they have to pay for it. And so that really is going to tell them, I mean, they don't have to pay a lot for it, but depending on what they want, that's going to tell you if they're serious or not. And if they're not serious, then let them go. And that's totally fine. Let them go. That's what I say. All right, guys. Well, thank you for joining me. I'm going to hop off. This was my first live. I'm doing it on YouTube and on Instagram. And so I'm toying with the idea of doing this weekly. So if you're interested in this, let me know that you liked it and that you would join again. I am grateful for those of you who joined. I love to see some familiar faces. So thank you guys for coming. I like doing this kind of thing that's just kind of like random and off the top of our heads and stuff like this, because I think that your questions are very valuable. And a lot of the time I'm not, actually, Kate, I was just thinking about you. Long time no see. I was like, where the heck has she been? But anyway, I am so happy to do these. I love answering your questions because it keeps me engaged in the conversation. I am an active agent too, but there are lots of things that you guys come up against that I don't necessarily get to know about or see or hear. So I love hearing from you guys, and I will be back. I'm trying to figure out scheduling wise when the best time to do this would be, but thank you for coming. I will be back. And thank you for all of your questions, because it is helpful to get interaction in something like this. So I don't know when I'll be back, but keep an eye out and I will be back with you. Hopefully sometime in the next couple weeks. But remember, I'm here on Tuesdays at 9:30. Jump on with me. If you are, you should be getting my emails. If you're not getting my emails of where you can log in and join me or come in person, you just shoot me an email or check your spam, because it might be in there, but shoot me an email, BrittanyHanduraRE@gmail.com. And I will see you at our trainings Tuesdays at 9:30. Remember, this Tuesday, we do not have a training because I am out of town. But other than that, I will be here the following Tuesday at 9:30. I will be here with you, talking all about lead generation, client events. We just talked about buyer presentation, listing presentations. They will be on YouTube soon. And so make sure you're following along on YouTube, because you'll get all my videos and all of that kind of stuff. All right, guys. Thank you. Thank you again for joining me, and I will see you soon.